It shows that you are just trying to make up some things, you're not investing your hard work into it. To show the examiner what points you have written extraordinarily, what data, what facts, what examples you have quoted, and how they are relevant, how they are helping you to express your idea about the essay more efficiently. Yeah, so namaste everyone. I'm ANAY NITIN NAVANDAR, and by God's grace I've secured an All India rank of 32 in this year's exam. And here I am to share a brief strategy about how to go about this exam, how to make our answers more presentable, more appealing to the examiner. This session will focus more on answer writing that we do in mains, adding value to the answers, making them more innovative so that they become, they stand out, they're not ordinary. Because in this exam, in this particular syllabus, the content is similar. Everyone from among us is reading the same content, following the same sources. There's no dearth of knowledge out there. But what makes it more interesting is how we innovate in our strategy, how we write those answers, make them more presentable, make them more extraordinary. So what I will talk in this session is how to go about it, and why I'm talking about it, because these are my scores, and this is just to show you that how I made many improvements in the answers that were written in my first attempt in 2020, and then in the second attempt. I think I followed some strategies, some things that worked for me, and my score was improved a lot, especially in the general studies papers. So we'll talk in brief about them. And so yeah, let's begin with essay. It has become a struggle for many people, and it's the first paper in the mains examination. So just a brief discussion about how to write good essays, how to score good in essay paper, because essay can make or break. That's what people say nowadays, and it's becoming more challenging, especially last year if you have seen the papers. So everyone will tell you that no preparation is needed for essay, but that's not the case. You actually need to know, you need to learn the art of writing essays, and only then no preparation is needed. So one should focus on how to write good essays, how to maintain the flow in the essay, how to make it more appealing to the examiner, because only after an interesting essay the examiner is going to give you good marks. So some general points about essay. You should begin with a good introduction. The introduction should be innovative. It's always good to have a self-made introduction. And with this, you should also be prepared for some common themes that you can expect. For example, you can expect essay on agriculture, you can expect essay on women issues in international relations, on upcoming newer technologies. So these are some common themes that you should expect, and you should be prepared with a good introduction that can make your essay very interesting. And this is where you will make a good impression on the examiner in the first few minutes after he takes your paper. And I particularly say self-made because many people use different strategies to write introductions. Some begin with a quote, some begin with writing anecdotes, some begin with true stories that have happened in history. And many people prefer to begin with a story. They write a story, an abstract story, they name a character and they start with the story. But I do feel that that particular thing is not very authentic. Because if I say, okay, XYZ is a boy and he lives there and his condition is that, and therefore, suppose there's an essay on poverty and many people prefer to begin this way. They name a person and then they describe him or her in a story. I think that is not a very good thing to start, because more than 50% people are doing the same thing. And coming up with a story is not a new thing. It's not very extraordinary. It's not very, it shows that you are just trying to make up some things. You're not investing your hard work into it. So I would discourage you all to start with such stories. Rather, you can take some real life examples, some very good relevant quotes that can make your introduction really beautiful. Also in essay it's said people at times become very irrelevant. They write what they know and not what the topic is about. Suppose there was a topic, poverty everywhere, anywhere is threat to prosperity everywhere. This was the topic, it came few years ago. So people start writing about what is poverty, what are reasons for poverty, why is India, what has India been doing for poverty. But the essay is not talking about that. The essay is something else, the topic is something else. So being relevant to what has been asked is very important, and you should always stick to the main theme of the essay, the theme which is expected from you. And this is why the commission expects you to write 2 essays in the paper, so that your coherence is checked, your ability to stick to that particular topic, to be relevant to that topic is being checked there. Also, I would suggest you to make a rough sketch before you start writing any essay. This is very, very important. In essay, generally there are 2 essays being asked for 125 marks each, and approximately you have 1.5 hours for each essay. So from that, and you'll already have been practicing answer writing, so you develop a good speed in that. So it's possible that you can write an full essay within an hour, within 60 minutes. It's very likely that you complete the essay. So I would recommend you to spend at least 30 minutes for making the rough sketch of the essay, because in this sketch you'll actually plan for the introduction, a good introduction. You will plan for the points that you are going to write in the essay, such that each point you write in each paragraph will be something new. It will open some new dimensions before the examiner. It won't be a repetition. It won't be something off the topic. So it is very important. You can also think of writing examples, writing quotes in the main body, so that it makes your essay interesting, and you stick to the topic, you do not divert from the topic, and then obviously the result is good marks. Also, it is important that you underline important points in the essay. We do this for general studies papers, but candidates generally do not do it in the essay paper, and it's extremely important here to show the examiner what points you have written extraordinarily, what data, what facts, what examples you have quoted, and how they are relevant, how they are helping you to express your idea about the essay more efficiently. So it is important that you underline significant points in your essay. And it is also important, and it is also advisable that you use a scale for that, because in essay you have plenty time, and if you underline with a scale, it will just make your essay look more clean and tidy, and therefore more presentable before the examiner. So that is important, and that is something you can do without much hard work. Yeah, it's also important that your language is good. It need not be a very extremely colorful or ornamental language, but yes, grammatically correct language is expected. And coming to quotes, sometimes we know quotes that are fully relevant to the topic, and it's good if you use such quotes in the introduction. But if the quote is like 60 to 70% relevant, it's not recommended that you use it in the introduction, because it will send a wrong message to the examiner that the person has not understood what the topic is about. So it's important that you use relevant quotes in the introduction, and if it's less relevant, we can use it in the body. So this is something that can make your essay, these are general points that can help you score good in the essay. We are just, this talk will be about how to make our answers more presentable and how to add value to them. So coming to the next, there's some illustrations in the presentation also. I was saying that you can be prepared for some themes in the essay. So this is what I prepared for agriculture, and this is actually a travelogue written by a French traveler, Bernier. So he mentions that how Bengal was prosperous in agriculture, and how he compares it with Egypt, and says that there was plenty of food, plenty of grains in the country. So this shows how prosperous Indian agriculture was. Suppose the theme of the essay relates to prosperity in Indian agriculture and the state then and the state now. This is a good way to start about it, and then this will make your essay look very impressive, and then you can slowly take the course, a temporal course. There are essays can be written temporally or sectorally. In temporal essays, you start with past, then come to present, and then you go for future, right? In sectors, you deal with various sectors, and that is how sectoral essays are written. So this is a good way to start about it. You can also quote many economists, agriculturists. To add to this, just I'll tell you an example. There was an economist, he was a Nobel laureate as well. His name is Gunnar Myrdal, and he says that the long-term battle in economic development will be won or lost in the agriculture sector. So it's a very good quote to start an essay which deals with, which is similar to, which has a theme in which agriculture is the main point, is the main subject. And it's also important, the quote can also be used in conclusions, while we write conclusions in GS3 paper where agriculture questions are asked. So suppose the question asks you about importance of Indian agriculture or scope of Indian agriculture or what we are doing to improve Indian agriculture. So a quote like this, which is very prospective, which is very futuristic, optimistic, can help you fetch good marks in GS3 papers as well. So it's important that you have your own compilation of quotes, of examples, so that they become handy to you and you can use them throughout essay and GS papers. Coming to General Studies 4, I call it Climax of Struggle because this is the last paper of the first week of the examination, mains examination. And many people face difficulties in this particular paper because this paper has to have a different approach to writing answers. The questions at many times are abstract, you have no idea, and you have to think then and there and prepare your answers. So it becomes very difficult. To think at that time and then start writing the answers and write good answers. Yeah, so you ought to have an instantaneous response, and I hope you know GS4 has two sections, section A and section B. So section A deals with more of theoretical questions and section B primarily deals with case studies. So the format for both the sections is different. You'll have to study differently and practice differently for both sections. And yes, ethics paper should be full of examples of quotes of ethical jargons, philosophers, thinkers, both Indian and Western. So you can have your own diary and you can start compiling these things. You can compile examples, you can write quotes. Now there are different values mentioned in the syllabus like empathy, kindness, responsibility. These values, integrity, probity. So you can collect quotes on these examples. You can collect examples of great leaders who have actually shown exceptional, who have displayed these values exceptionally, and you can have your own compilation of that. So that before exam you read it and you can actually apply it in the answers when you write answers, and this will make an outstanding impression on the examiner, and this is how you get marks. By ethical jargons, I mean there are various terms in ethics. If you have read ethics, you can come across terms like principle of distributive justice, or say there are many thinkers who have given their own philosophies like Kantian imperative, categorical morality, consequential morality. These are terms that are mentioned in the syllabus, or you can read them and you can use them in answers so that your answers look more, they stand out. Yeah, in philosophers, you can refer to Indian philosophers, you can quote Swami Vivekanand, you can quote Aurobindo, Gandhiji. So this will help you connect your answers, make them more relevant. And also in ethics paper, many times we do not remember the examples, or we do not know what to write in the questions. As soon as we see the questions are so abstract that we do not know how to start it. So this is an acronym which I developed, which helped me a lot in writing ethics answers. It's SIDBI, SIDBI. So S stands for society, I for individual, D for democracy, B for businesses, and I for international players maybe. So in this particular approach, you can always find some points, some examples which deal with ethics or unethics in the particular question being asked. For example, business, there are business ethics. Some companies play fair, some play unfair. So you always have examples of companies doing good for the society, companies harming the society. Similarly, in international geopolitics, you have many examples. Whenever you want to quote some negative example, you can always look up to China. You can look up to Afghanistan to quote negative examples in ethics. There's democracy. Some democracies are flourishing. They respect rights of the people. Some democracies curb rights of the people. So this also becomes ethics versus unethics. There are individual cases. There are leaders who have shown these values. And then there's society. So this SIDBI can be very handy, very helpful when you write answers to section A in ethics. Yeah, these are some rules that I developed while writing ethics section A paper. Yeah, so the context should always involve ethics. That's the first thing. Because sometimes the questions look like they are related to general studies, and then we end up writing answers as we write in GS 1, 2 and 3. So that's not the case. Though the question looks like a GS 1, 2, 3 paper, you ought to write your answers in terms of ethics. You have to use ethical terms mentioned in your syllabus. So that's the first thing you will always have to do. Second thing I've already talked about, you ought to have examples. Just one thing here, when you write examples in any question, the examples should not be from the same background and same timeline. This you can prefer not to do this. For example, you cannot use Ram Mohan Roy and Ambedkar in the same question, because they have worked for similar causes, and then that would be a repetition for the examiner. So that you quote this in one answer, you can quote Ambedkar in second answer, and then you can have some other examples from other fields. So this will make your answer look more diversified. Yeah, fit at least 2-3 examples in every question. Every question must have one of the following. It should at least have a quote. If the question is on value, kindness, revenge, empathy, you can have a quote ready with you and you can quote it. You can write some recommendations of the committee, especially the second ARC. There was a ethics, I think report 4, ethics in governance. That's the name of the report. You can use that. Yeah, I've mentioned it. And then you can always quote fundamental rights, DPSPs, fundamental duties, laws, so that your answers become more relatable to civil services. Yeah, if you get no examples, if you want positive examples, you can always look up to Gandhiji, Mahabharata. You'll always get good ethical examples from these sources. If you do not recall negative examples or you do not recall examples where unethical practices are done, you can look at Afghanistan, China, that's it. And when it comes to section B of ethics, it deals primarily with case studies. I hope you all are aware about it. And in this, the Commission expects us to be very practical while we give our solutions. We can be innovative and show a pragmatic view of the situation. So in case studies, how you innovate? Suppose the case study deals with controlling a riot situation or handling a protest. Then you can bifurcate your course of action in 2 ways: interactive measures and coercive measures. Here you can talk with the people, you can explain them, and then here you have to make sure that the law and order is maintained. So there are coercive measures and interactive measures. Similarly, if the case study deals with some developmental issue, then you can have your strategy as short-term, immediate, that is short-term, medium-term and long-term. In short-term, you can say that I'll stop illegal mining, I'll issue them a notice and make them surrender whatever you want to do. And in long-term measures, you can say that I'll recommend the particular ministry or the state industrial development corporation to come up, set some developmental project in the area which will help people in long-term. So these are immediate, medium and long-term measures that you can classify into. There are some case studies where you'll have to mention these two separately, part of my legal duty and part of my ethical duty, because these two need not always be same. So they can be different in many cases, and you can then bifurcate your course of action in this way. Yeah, this is something about case studies. Also in case studies, there's a common thing to write stakeholders involved in the cases. We generally, what we do is we make a tree diagram and mention the stakeholders. We do this and mention the stakeholders. But this is something innovative we can do. You can make a pie chart and then you can show the weightage of the particular stakeholder in it. This looks very appealing to the examiner. This is, suppose this case deals with the Sarpanch Pati system. So in this, villagers are one of the stakeholders, you are one, husband of the Sarpanch and the Sarpanch woman. So this is how you can make it look more presentable and basically beautify your answers. Yeah, you can also, see this is my, just to tell you, this is how you should make your notes. You can have a diary and keep on compiling good things that you get and then apply it in your answers. Now this is something I came across, Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment, and it was about the ability to delay gratification and basically developing more maturity, and the people who do that will be more, the probability of them being successful is more. This is what the experiment was about. I recommend you all to read this. So this I noted down, and I think in some essay or some GS4 answer I must have used it. Recently, also you can note down current affairs that is going about and include them in your answers. For example, first audit divas was celebrated in the CAG office. This was done for the first time last year. So in ethics, there are questions on accountability, there are questions on good governance. So this is how you can make your answers linked with current affairs that's going about. Yeah, in case studies also, you can make use of mottos, the service mottos. Like this is the motto for Indian Administrative Services, Yoga Karma Sukhaushalam. This is for police services, Satya Seva Surakshanam. So suppose there's a case study where you are expected to be a police officer and you ought to provide security in some region. So in the conclusion of this particular case study, you can say that, yeah, this being the motto of my services, I will stick to it, I will abide by it and do whatever course of action you have mentioned above. So this will make your case study more appealing to the examiner, and he or she will actually get impressed when you link your motto with the part of your duty. So that's one thing to do. I talked about ethical jargons. Suppose the case study is on distributing vaccines or vaccinating people. So you can write about prioritarian principle of distributive justice. You can write the utilitarian approach, Kantian imperative, probity, Gandhiji's talisman, Antyodaya to Sarvodaya. These are some jargons you need to use in conclusions in main body of writing case studies, and they make your answers more innovative. There are also one thing I found out this. Suppose there's a case study on changing attitude of the people. So people are doing some wrong things in a district, and you are posted as an officer there, and you have to improve them, shift their attitude. So in theoretical, in theory, we read about CAB approach to attitude, the cognitive, affective, and behavioral approach. Now this, you can use that theoretical knowledge in case studies. You can say that firstly we'll change their cognitive approach. We'll tell them, okay, this is this. We'll give them knowledge. Then you will have some affective changes and then behavioral changes. So this is applying theoretical knowledge from section A to solving case studies in section B. Yes, also in case studies you can write about officers who have done exceptionally well in their own districts. There are many examples of these. There are officers who have tried their best to control illegal sand mining, illegal mining, officers who have worked for upliftment in tribal areas. So there are real life examples, and suppose there comes a case study of illegal sand mining maybe. In the conclusion, you write that you can write that the work of this officer has been truly motivating, and I will look up to him or her and follow the similar course of action or whatever you want to write. So this is how you can include real life examples while concluding a case study. So this will give this will send a good message to the examiner that the person is aware of what's going on and what he or she is writing in the paper. Similarly, there are questions when values are asked to you in ethics paper. So last year there was a question, I think question number 2 in last year's ethics paper, that what values will help you when you are some civil servant, at some position. So even in that also, it's very normal to write, list out 8 to 10 values. Everyone will do that. What extra you can do, or as the talk is about, how you can add value to it, is you can make a flowchart and show what values will you need when you actually go to the place and execute your duties. For example, you are put into a situation, you will need fortitude to face the situation. Once you go there, you will require emotional intelligence to understand the condition there. You will need empathy to understand the sufferings of the people, their problems. Then you should have objectivity to analyze the situation, what is present there. Courage of conviction to take a decision. Leadership and communication to execute the decision. Moral persuasive power to talk to people and persuade them to solve the issues maybe. Then you will have to have rule of law. If people are not agreeing, or if there's some situation that is going out of hand, you will have to use rule of law. You should have selflessness and dedication while you do all this, perform this duty. And lastly, this is actually responsibility. Whatever action you take, whatever action your team takes, you should be responsible for that. So in this way, you are making a flowchart and actually showing that at a particular position, at a particular place, how all these ethical values will be useful to you. So it's always good to, it would always be helpful to use such a flowchart rather than just randomly listing down values that are present in the syllabus. Coming to GS 1, 2 and 3. Yeah, the syllabus is very vast. Sky is the limit for the syllabus. There are constraints on your knowledge. There are also constraints on your time which you have to write these exams. So what you can do is, what people generally do is they write answers in this format, IBC, introduction, body and conclusion format. And this is advisable when you write commissions papers. But in this you can be prepared with introductions and conclusions. For example, for introductions, you can have your definitions ready. For example, in society paper, you should have definition on globalization, secularism, urbanization, or maybe in geography, related to various geographical formations. Your definition should be ready so that in the examination hall, you do not spend extra time to think about the definition, and you can write it then and there. Secondly, you can write the context. After definition, you can write the context of particular question. For example, the question talks about some recent happening in the past. So you can write a definition or that, and then you can connect it to the recent event. This will give a message to the examiner that the person is aware about the happenings around him or her. You can write a quote. It's good to write quote in GS papers as well, because the commission itself says that these are conventional essay type papers if you have read the notification. So it's good to write quotes if they are very relevant. Data, I never quoted any data in GS 1 and 2, but it becomes extremely important to quote it in economics, because you need to be aware about GDP numbers, investment rates, tax collection. These are mandatory. Fiscal deficit, these are mandatory, and you should know this data. This data is important. The rest of things you can ignore. Now coming paper wise, if we talk about GS1, as you all know, it includes history, world history, ancient history, art and culture, modern history, geography, world geography, society. Now in this, I recommend you to be very specific when you write answers to modern history questions. For example, many times it is asked that mention the contributions of M.K. Gandhi to Indian national movement. Now, in this particular question, we all know that he was instrumental in leading the non-cooperation movement and many satyagrahas. But everyone is going to write them. What extra you can write is you can mention the year when the movement took place. You can mention the context of some British government bringing some act to which the movement was a response. So you can make such value additions to your answer. Many times when some acts were brought out by British government, our leaders commented on them. So there are comments of leaders on the 1908 and 1920. I don't remember the exact dates, but there are quotes by leaders on them. You can mention that. There are commentaries by leaders. You can mention them in the paper. You can maybe conclude your answers by saying that it was truly a great movement or something, and this particular leader called it as a this. Then coming to geography, it is important that you draw world maps everywhere. If the question relates to location of industries, it's important you draw a map of India and show the location of the particular industry. And this is important that you have some suitable examples ready with you for secularism, globalization, urbanization. These themes are continuously being asked in the UPSC UPSC CSE GS1 paper. If you go through the previous year questions, you will find repeated questions on secularism, globalization and urbanization. So you can have your introduction, conclusion ready for these themes. You can have suitable examples for these themes. For example, I'll tell you, if the question is on secularism and maybe what is Indian secularism or what is our concept of secularism. So an year ago, there was an all-faith prayer conducted at the inauguration of Central Vista building. So now an all-faith prayer is itself a beautiful explanation of how India embraces secularism, because we have not dissociated religion from our program, nor we have given preference to a particular religion. We have placed them all at the same level. So this example of all-faith prayer conducted at Central Vista, if you mention it in secularism, you need not write anything, because it explains to the examiner that this person has understood what Indian secularism is and how we embrace it. So these suitable examples, which are very much relevant, are necessary and can fetch you half or 1 mark extra in each answer. Also, the subheadings in the answers could be made more relatable to particular question. Now we all know that people follow a pestle approach to writing answers. It's political, economic, social, people go about it. Now suppose the question comes from the society part of GS1. You just need to make one addition to your points. For example, your subheading is political, you can write it as socio-political. If it's economic, you can write it as socio-economic, socio-cultural. So making it more relatable to the society question, this will show the examiner that you are writing the answer to this particular, you have understood the gravity of the question and you are addressing it very aptly. So subheadings could be more relatable in this way. For example, last year there was a question asked on distribution of how oil industry has helped economics throughout the world. So for writing reasons to this, you can write as geopolitical reasons, geo-economic reasons. So this makes the subheadings very much relatable to the question that is being asked. Yeah, similar for GS2, you have to extensively mention articles from the Constitution, Supreme Court judgments, name of the commissions, comments of various constitutional experts, lawyers. For example, I think there's a famous lawyer who called preamble as the identity card of Constitution. In polity, we read all of these. So you can mention this. If there's a question on preamble, you can actually conclude it or write in the body somewhere that this particular eminent jurist called preamble as the identity card of Constitution. This makes it adds value to your answer. You can mention DPSPs, articles about DPSPs. This is a good way to go about it. Examples in good governance. Recently we have faceless assessment in income tax. So this is an example of how to make governance efficient. What is good governance? So these examples you can include in your paper. Coming to international relations. In international relations, your understanding is being checked nowadays. the questions are not factual. The questions are about your understanding of how you understand a particular geopolitical situation and what are your opinion about it, what's the scope of the problem, and how is India dealing with it. So you'll have to have the analysis of the situation ready by yourself. For example, there are many things going on in the Indo-Pacific. The Persian Gulf is continuously boiling. There are things being done by China. So you have to have analysis of all these situations and be ready, be prepared for answer for a question being asked. Similarly, you can use lines used by leaders and experts while writing answers to international relations. For example, Honorable Minister for External Affairs in his address to the UNSC once said that India is a voice of moderation and an advocate of dialogue. So this is a very impressive line which you can use in your answers. You can conclude your answers by saying that, okay, this is the situation. As our Foreign Minister, Honorable Dr. Jaishankar says, India is a voice of moderation and an advocate of dialogue. We ought to do this, or we ought to take this particular course of action. So this makes your answer very much appealing to the examiner, and he'll actually feel that you are in sync with what's going around the world. So this value addition you have to do, and as I said, maintain a diary, keep noting such points, such good lines used by leaders. Similarly, in GS3, you have to have get your concepts cleared about economy, because nowadays fundamental questions from core economy are being asked about GDP, about investment rates. So such concepts should be cleared. Data, as I said, in economics, data is important, understanding is important. Yeah, this is how you go about GS3. Yeah, this is an illustration of how you make your notes about adding value to your answers. For example, for DPSP, if any question comes, you can use these terms in your answer. That it came from the instrument of instructions. It was known that it was derived from this. It ought to establish a welfare state and not a police state. It aims to establish economic and social democracy. So these are terms, these are phrases that can make your answers good. So you need to use these whenever the question deals with DPSPs. Similarly, you can have Article 37 learned by heart. What are DPSPs? Now in amendment, suppose there are questions on constitutional amendment. You can quote Pandit Nehru here when he said that we want this constitution to be solid and permanent, but without permanence. So this is very relevant quote when we deal with questions of constitutional amendment. So this can make your answer good, look good. Similarly, Sarkaria Commission, which says that the rule of federal supremacy is a technique to avoid absurdity, resolve conflicts, and ensure harmony between union and state laws. Now there was a question on cooperative and combative and competitive federalism. So this is how you quote Sarkaria Commission there at the end, which talks about the rule of federal supremacy. There are questions on centralization, of how decentralization is important. So you can say that over-centralization leads to blood pressure at the center and anemia at the periphery. This is what Sarkaria Commission told in its report. So these are small phrases, small quotes which you can write in your answers. This can make your answer stand out, because everything else will be written by everyone. People are reading the same content, same sources, so you'll end up writing the same things that they are writing. As I said, the quote of Dr. Jaishankar, India is a voice of moderation. And also, if there's a question on US and Russia, you can write that it is the uniqueness of Indian diplomacy to have strategic partnership with both US and Russia. This may seem to be a tight rope to walk, but it's a reflection of India's significance in current geopolitical situation. These can be lines of conclusion that can make your answer look complete to the examiner. Similarly, this is an illustration for covering international relations. This is India's relations with Bangladesh. For introduction, in introduction you can use phrases like Bangladesh is true friend, trusted neighbor, and valued partner of India, or maybe you can use it in a conclusion. Recently, Bangladesh, the Liberation Day of Bangladesh was celebrated. So you can start your answer that Indians entered Bangladesh as liberators and today we are true friends, trusted neighbors and valued partners. Something like this you can make up, which can make your answer look good. Then these are points how you make notes. Now these are 10 lines and I've covered entire international relations with Bangladesh, and this is a very good thing to go. You note the points, you note what are the issues with Bangladesh, what are the cooperations, what are the ties being based on. So yeah, issues I mentioned: Teesta, illegal cattle smuggling, maritime border, Chinese investments in Bangladesh. So these are issues which we have with Indo-Bangla ties. So this is in 5 to 10 lines. You can cover the entire country, and this you can do with Russia, you can do with China, you can do with United States, and institutions or formations like the Quad and AUKUS, because repeatedly questions are being asked in the Indo-Pacific, on the Indo-Pacific region. So yeah, this is how you go about it. These are some good sentences I have written for concluding my answers. This is about China. I think it's related to cyber security. When the Chinese firms like Red Echo and Stone Panda targeted Indian vaccine makers. So you can write these examples when it comes to cyber security and why it is important for us to safeguard our critical information infrastructure. So this you quote. This is a very recent example, very current example. You can quote this in your answers. And while writing conclusion to such things, you can write that countries like China have made borders redundant because A, they do not respect them anyway, and 2, they are striking in spaces with no borders. So these kind of conclusions can actually help you write good answers, because there we struggle, and in the examination it's very difficult to think about what to write in the conclusion, and we end up writing the same question that is being asked. If the question is how China is being a threat to India's cybersecurity, in hurry we'll write that therefore China is being a threat to India's cybersecurity. This doesn't make any sense, because 50% of the people are going to write the same thing. They are going to copy the question statement and make it their conclusion. So this is not the good way to go about it. So these are some good sentences that you can be prepared with them beforehand, and they can come handy to you in the examination. Yeah, similarly, you can note down things that are going in the current affairs. This is Panchamitra strategy which the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned at the COP26, and I actually noted it down, and I was fortunate enough to get a 10-marker question in GS3 paper this year, which asked about what are India's commitments at the Glasgow summit. So I had already done that, 5 pointers, 10 marks. I think I scored good there. I must have scored good there. So this is how you note things down, jot them down, learn them. Because had the question not been asked, I would have used it in some environment question saying that, okay, and concluding the question that, okay, India has stated its Panchamitra strategy in the recent Glasgow summit held in, recent COP26 held in Glasgow. But I did this, and it was helpful to me in the examination because a direct question was asked. Yeah, this is one exercise I did for GS3 economics this year. Generally, we tend to forget things. We know everything in economy, but we tend to forget things. So before the GS3 paper, I just read this. These are just terms in economic, and they can be used to make mention in our answers. For example, 5 trillion economy, Atmanirbhar Bharat, NPA, unicorns, entrepreneurship, MSME, unemployment, fiscal prudence, wealth creation in the economy, investment rates, labor intense cross subsidies, neoliberal theme of development, inclusive development, sustainable development, jobless growth, PLI scheme, FRBM Act, fiscal consolidation, tax to GDP ratio. These are the terms you just need to revise before the examination, so that when you write the answers, they strike you and you can mention them. Because it is very difficult in the examination, because you have constraints of time, you have constraints of knowledge. So constraints of knowledge will always be there, because no matter how much you study, the paper will throw some bouncers to you. There would be questions which are very abstract, and you will feel very depressed when you see the questions, particular questions. So constraints on knowledge cannot be fully rectified. There would be shortcomings, But yes, there are, as I said, you can prepare introduction, conclusion, some data which can help you bridge the gap. And then there are constraints of time. Even there, if these things strike your mind continuously during the paper, you can save time in that. And it's very important to cover all the questions in any GS paper, as you all know it, because even you lose one question, you're actually losing 10 marks, 15 marks, and that can throw you out. So this is something about economy. And having talked a lot about how to add value to your answers, which was the main theme of the talk, let's talk some philosophy about this exam. Basically for me, this exam is a test of your hard work, patience, and smartness. And these three ought to go together. And so dealing one by one, I'll talk about hard work. There's no substitute to hard work. You ought to do it. You cannot find any shortcut to it. And in the process, you will have to give up certain things. You will have to give up your social media. You will have to give up your friends, trips. And that is good because it will keep you more focused. You won't get diverted from what you're doing. And so it's okay to give up certain things. Doesn't matter. Second thing is keep pushing. There would be many ups and downs in the examination. I myself have given six exams in this particular exam. I gave 2 attempts and I qualified interview in the first and of course in the second. So every time before the exam you will feel depressed, you will feel you will be out of your confidence. You know, I mean, these exam is a test of your patience, your perseverance. So it's very important that you, despite all odds, you keep pushing through all ups and downs and just focus on your hard work. That's the only thing we can do. And lastly, practice is important when it comes to hard work. You will have to practice prelims papers, you will have to write mains answers. There's no shortcut to it because it's only the answer writing that can help you improve your answers. Because if you think that you can go and write in the exam directly in the examination, that's not going to help because you'll have to cover 20 questions in 3 hours. That's really not possible. Even if you prepare, that's a difficult thing to do. And if you ask people who have cleared this exam, everyone will tell you that despite all preparation, despite all practicing test papers, it's very difficult to actually complete 20 answers, good answers in the examination. So only practice can help you sail through it, and there can be no shortcut to it. Secondly, I'll talk about patience in the examination. I previously talked about the marshmallow experiment conducted by Walter Mischel, and the outcome was that people who have the ability to delay gratification have more probability to succeed in any exam or life in general. So have this attitude to delay the gratification. Don't think that I want to clear it in this attempt, or you can aim it, but then you cannot go on watching videos of how people are celebrating after getting into the services, or how people are enjoying the service, or how people are enjoying their training courses. That's certainly not going to help you, and that can't be your aim. Because if that's your aim, then you cannot sustain the services because it's a long journey. So have that ability to delay that gratification. And lastly, I would stress upon this particular thing. I feel it very important. It's about having a good mentor by your side. Throughout this journey, you need to be very focused when you keep preparing. So a good mentor by your side can prevent you from distracting and continuously guide you to achieve your targets, and he or she should know about your capabilities, your skills, what knowledge you have, what strategy you are following, and where you are heading to. So a good mentor is always recommended, but everyone is not so fortunate to have a good mentor, and so there's an alternative. You can have a good, strong mind there. Because in this examination, you will feel pressure. You'll feel pressure from your peers who would be doing extremely good in their jobs, or maybe their masters. There could be pressure from your relatives who would say that, no, this is a hard exam to crack. You need to spend 4 years, 5 years. This could be very discouraging for you. So having a strong mind is very important, because only that will support you, be by your back, and help you go through this. And particularly when I talk about mind, I would also quote an author whose name is Milton, and his book is The Paradise Lost. And there he says that a good mind can, a human mind can make heaven out of hell and hell out of heaven. So this is extremely important, that your mindset is very proper, very suitable, very appropriate when it comes to giving this examination. And lastly, I would talk about smartness. Without this, I think it would be very difficult to clear this examination, because the syllabus is huge, the competition is huge, and therefore to have your own strategy is very important. And I say this because, see, nowadays there's a lot going about artificial intelligence, and what AI does is collects data all across and then comes out with individual results for you. So this is what AI does in short. So I think with your human intelligence, you can watch what toppers have to say, people who have cleared this exam, who have written extensive blogs about their strategies, their approach to see this exam. You can go through all of them. You can see which person has similar skills to you, which person has similar background to you. You can read or watch his or her strategy, and then by doing all of this, you can come up with your own strategy. And I think that is very extremely beneficial, because only that can help you at the end. For example, if I were to say I never read newspapers for the exam, and I referred to some toppers who were similar to me, and they in their talks, in their blogs, told that there's no need to read newspapers. I read some compilations, but I covered what was essential, what was important. You must have also seen that while making notes, I had written all the current affairs in it, but I never read newspaper. I did it from all other sources, maybe some good YouTube channels, some compilations about current affairs. So I never felt a need to read newspapers. So this is how I made my strategy. If I would have listened to many people who say that reading 2 newspapers in a day is must, or reading newspaper for 2 hours in a day is must, I would have wasted 2 hours for 2.5 years, and that would have really cost me something big. So this is how you use smartness and derive your own strategy, which will help you excel at last. Yeah, and this is how I say hard work is important. This is not, I'm not boasting about myself, but this is how I practice answer writing. You have to evolve in this exam. Whatever I have spoken for last 30-40 minutes, the techniques or the innovation that I came up with, they all came through writing answers, analyzing them to see where I'm lacking, to see what people have done, people who have cleared the exam, what they have done in their answers. And so that is the only key to it. You should use your own smartness to evolve in the exam, spend time with the papers, spend time with what you have written, what you have read, and this is how you can clear it. And this is a snap of strategy maybe. This is, I think, before the mains examination, how I planned my study, and I think planning is important, basically, to say that. Yeah, so to end this, I think this is very important. The game is not over till it's over, and it's very applicable in each stage of the exam. You are giving prelims maybe, so after prelims, if you go through it, the game is still not over. You'll have to face mains, you'll have to face the personality test. If you're not qualifying the prelims, the game is still not over. You'll have to give it next year, you'll have to come back stronger. Okay, same is the case for mains examination. Unless you get into the final list, the game is not over, and you'll have to continuously be hopeful, be patient, be persistent, be hardworking. And that's it from my side. I thank you all, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Any questions related to prelims, mains, interview? I have not covered prelims and mains interview. This was specifically targeting about how to write good answers in the examination, how you can have your own diary, you can have your own notes where you have all the material for adding value to your answers. This is not about preparing basic content that you can do from other sources. That I'm no one to say that, you all know that. So that was it. And if you have any questions, we can discuss. Yeah, yes. Yes. See, basically, I did not practice much of answer writing before mains till I gave prelims, because I was self-studying actually, and I saw prelims as a great obstacle initially, because the hype was so much that I was really, I feared that if I don't clear prelims, it would be a great, uh, great, I think, loss. So I dedicated more time to prelims in my initial attempt in 2020. I never practiced answer writing, but then once prelims was over, without worrying for the results, I started writing answers. Initially, you write very bad answers. This is my experience. You write very bad answers. You write irrelevant things. You write things. Generally, one more thing that I have observed is we are habitual to write long sentences in the answers. We keep on writing full paragraphs, and the main point is somewhere of 2-3 words, and we end up writing a paragraph about it. So everyone does it. There's nothing wrong in it. What you can do is keep on refining, keep on rectifying, and you'll have to do it by yourself. When you have written the answers, analyze them, see what extra you have written, what you could have written, what extra knowledge you had which you could have used here, which quote you knew, which data you knew, which you could have used in the answer. So after writing answer, you'll have to give 10 more minutes to analyze this. Only then you'll start writing good answers, and you can maybe improve. Yes, please.
So, sir, how do you divide your time for GS
Yeah. Actually, I have not mentioned my strategy for optional. I have average score in optional this year. I took agriculture as an optional. Basically, I am not from agriculture background. I've done a BTech course in chemical technology. So still that I took agriculture. So it was really a new subject for me. So initially, I had to spend a lot of time about agriculture, and even that I prepared by myself. So it was tough for me to balance both of things initially in the initial first attempt, where I also faced some penalty for paying less attention to agriculture and GS both. So basically, to maintain a balance, I think it depends more on what your optional is and how accustomed you are with your optional. If it's your graduation subject, you need not do it a lot. If it's not, then you'll have to spend enough time. If it has more of static and less of dynamic, then it's fine if you keep on reading your notes. But if it's dynamic, you'll have to add more current happenings. Maybe it's important for PSR optionals, where IR is basically wholly or maximum questions are from current affairs. So for them, it's important that they give considerable enough time for optional. And you can always prioritize things. You can see your own strengths and weaknesses. For me, if you see, I'll show you. This was I showed you what my scores were in the initial attempt and how I had to improve them. Literally, this is how bad I scored. 81 in GS1, I took it to 114. 89 in GS4 to 127 this time. So look at your strengths and weaknesses, where you have to give more attention to, and I think that will only help. A generalized scheme of things won't help, because everyone has their own skill sets, and this exam is a level playing ground for everyone, and different combination works for everyone. Some score good in GS, some score good in optional, some score good in personality test, some have exceptionally good scores in essay. So a different combination works for everyone. And that is what I want to say is, look at your strengths, weaknesses, skill sets that you have, capabilities that you have, and which can give you an edge over others, where you can perform good, and where your hard work, where the hard work you put gives more results, give more benefits to you. I think that is the good way to go about, and then decide how you need to balance both of them. Yeah. So anything else? Yeah.
So as you said, you had agriculture as optional subject. So it was not your background subject.
Yeah.
So if we take our background subject, like mine is zoology, is my I studied in graduation. So we score good.
Yeah, it all depends on how well you studied it in the graduation. But I would say if you're comfortable with the subject, it's always a good idea to go about it. And in optionals, which I have observed, particularly in science optionals and that to agriculture, there are some themes that are repeated continuously. The commission is very much interested in some themes, and the PYQs, if you see, there are repeated questions on such topics. So in optionals, it is important that you identify such topics, prioritize them, prepare them thoroughly, and if you're comfortable enough to balance zoology, because I don't think zoology has much relevance in other GS papers, except some part of biotechnology, maybe in GS3, right? Yeah. So if you're fine with that, you are ready to devote a separate time for zoology, which won't be much relevant to other papers, then it's fine. And I think you can score extremely good if you are good in zoology in your graduation. That actually doesn't matter, and these all are vague and baseless assessments that people do, that some optional is performing good or some optional is not going good. These are very vague, they are baseless, and I don't know, I discourage from getting involved in such topics. It depends up to you. If you are comfortable, you are confident, go ahead with it. I never had any idea about agriculture. I read the syllabus, I thought I could do this. I think I did it because it never became an obstacle for me to qualify the exam. In first attempt, I did go to the interview. In second also, I cleared it. So it never became an obstacle for me. Though I scored average marks, I had to face some difficulties in extremely technical parts of the paper. But yes, you can do good if you are comfortable. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Right. I think the day the prelims ends, you can have a break for 2 or 3 days and start preparing for mains, irrespective of what result you are expecting. Firstly, don't expect any result. Let it come when it want to, and start preparing for mains. You can start with you can start with topics which you have already read in prelims. Maybe modern history you have done well, so revise it then and there, because as mains approaches, you won't have time to read things that you have done before. The new things the things get so hectic, test series gets so hectic that you actually end up, and the optional especially, you end up having no time for these things. So revise them then and there, because the things are fresh in your mind. You can read Lakshmikant again, polity, you can read modern history, art and culture, the topics which are same for mains and prelims, geography. Read it in maybe a week and finish them then and there. And after that, you can go for new topics. If you haven't done anything for mains before prelims, you can start with topics that have very high priority, high weightage in the examination. For example, agriculture and economics. You have 3 to 4 questions on agriculture. You can do that first. World history, if you see, there's hardly one question. Last year there was no question. So you can keep it at last. First cover what is essential for you, what can fetch you marks. At least bare minimum above average marks, you can do that. And I think every day you can practice answer writing. That is the most important thing you'll have to do. And also practice answer writing for questions that are unknown to you. Because in the examination hall, you will get 50% of the questions that you have never seen, you have no idea about. And to write those answers is the skill you have to develop. That is my take on this. Because at the end of the day, syllabus is so vast that the commission will throw bouncers at you. And people will write answers to questions which everybody knows. The difference comes where you answer questions that are very vague, that have come out of context. And every year such questions come. This year there was a question on S400 and its competitors and what India is doing for the same something. Now this was very much unexpected. No one read about what the exact technology is. Everyone just knew that we are buying S400 from Russia and there are some possibility of Katsa around it. So no one read about the technology as such. But if you approach that answer, if you have practiced answer writing, you will end up writing some general terms about the same. That okay, we are buying it from Russia, it's advanced military, I think anti-missile technology, such general points, because it's always better to write generic points than writing no points. So answer writing is important, and the one skill you have to develop in answer writing is writing answers to questions that you never heard of, you never seen of. That's it. Yeah.
Sir, answer writing should be point-wise or paragraph-wise?
In most of the cases, it should be point-wise. It's helpful to you because there is a constraint of time in the examination. You ought to have, you ought to provide more content in limited time, and the space is also limited. So in that short amount of time and space, you have to give more to the examiner, because the examiner is interested in more points, more dimensions to the question. So it's helpful for you to write it concisely, precisely, and that comes through practice. I already spoke about it. Initially you will end up writing paragraphs, but don't worry, you will have to cut it down. See what extra words you are writing, what adjectives, what adverbs you are using in the sentences which are not necessary, without which the sentence, the phrase can make full sense to the examiner. Cut down those extra words, and I think this will help you in making them concise. And also, paragraph writing is not bad either. I used it for writing answers to international relations, because as I said, they depend, the questions are more about your opinion or about more what the situation is. So you cannot write a situation in points, you cannot write your opinion in points. There ought to be a paragraph, full paragraph of it. So I approached international relation questions with paragraph mode. Rest all was in point wise. Yeah.
सर आप बीटेक की हैं बट सर मैथ ऑप्शन नहीं।
हाँ, तो जब मैंने ऑप्शनल डिसाइड किया था लेना, तो मुझे साइंस ऑप्शनल लेना था. आई वॉज मोर कंफर्टेबल विद साइंस ऑप्शनल. तो मैंने 3 शॉर्टलिस्ट किए थे, एक केमिस्ट्री, एक एग्रीकल्चर और एक मैथमेटिक्स. और मुझे सेल्फ स्टडी करना था, और जब मैंने सिलेबस देखा तीनों का, तो इवन देन आई वॉज इंटरेस्टेड इन एग्रीकल्चर पहले से, बट तब उसके बाद भी लगा कि दिस इज़ डूएबल फॉर मी, आई कैन डू दिस बाय माई सेल्फ. मैथमेटिक्स थोड़ा प्योर मैथमेटिक्स है, इंजीनियरिंग मैथ्स नहीं है वो. उसमें इंजीनियरिंग मैथमेटिक्स के चैप्टर्स बहुत कम है, और हमने जो पढ़ा है वो इंजीनियरिंग मैथमेटिक्स, दैट इज़ वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दिस वन. सो मैथमेटिक्स आई रूल्ड आउट, एंड केमिस्ट्री भी मुझे आई वॉज नॉट कंफर्टेबल विद पेपर 2 ज़्यादा, तो आई टुक एग्रीकल्चर.
सर मेरा अभी जी एडवांस एग्जाम दिया है, मैं बन गया, तो अब नॉर्मल ग्रेजुएशन मतलब करने कोई प्राइवेट बीटेक कर लें या फिर नॉर्मल ग्रेजुएशन को करके सीबीए और हम लोकेशन शुरू कर लें फर्स्ट ईयर से?
नहीं, आई डोंट थिंक ये अच्छा आइडिया है कि आप प्रिपरेशन के लिए आपके ग्रेजुएशन को के साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर रहे हो. इनफैक्ट आप यदि बीटेक भी कर लो, मैं सजेस्ट करूंगा कि आप बीटेक करिए अच्छे कॉलेज से, अच्छी जॉब भी लीजिए. आई डिड अ जॉब फॉर 3 months, आफ्टर दैट आई रिजाइन, आई गॉट अ कैंपस प्लेसमेंट, आफ्टर दैट आई डिसाइडेड टू रिजाइन एंड स्टार्ट प्रिपेयरिंग. सो ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको सब छोड़ के एकदम प्रिपरेशन करना है, बिकॉज एग्ज़ाम अनसर्टन है, ये सबको पता है. सिलेक्शन होगा कब होगा किसी को नहीं पता. सो इट्स नॉट अ गुड आइडिया टू रिस्क योर एंटायर करियर बाय टेकिंग सच हेस्टी डिसीजंस. तो आप एक काम करिए, आप ग्रेजुएशन कर लीजिए अच्छे से, एंड उसके बाद आप सोचिए कि आपको कितना इंटरेस्ट है.
समझ में नहीं आ रहा क्या करें.
नहीं, देर आर गुड कॉलेजेस आउटसाइड. इट्स नॉट दैट यू हैव टू हैव IIT. देर आर गुड इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेजेस, यू कैन. या no, I've done BTech from ICT Mumbai. Yeah. Yes.
Sir, how did you devote your time to all the GS subjects differently, and what was your routine for the approach of to the examination?
Right. For GS papers, see, first attempt में जब मैंने दिया था, तो my entire time went in preparing the basic content to covering all the topics in the syllabus. तो मैं उतना ही करके गया था, and my marks will show you that मुझे नंबर भी उतने ही मिले हैं पहले अटेम्प्ट में. I did not score very good. You can see these are all, मतलब काम का कुछ लिख के आए हो पेपर में, उसके नंबर है ये सब. In the second attempt, I paid more attention to add value to my answers, which the entire talk was about, how you can make your answers more presentable and more appealing. So second attempt में मैंने content तो मेरा ready था, first में basic content was ready. I devoted more time to add value to it, to make more innovations. जैसे मैंने वो case study का बताया कि आप pie chart करके ये कर लो, stakeholders लिख दो. Now I have never seen anyone who has cleared this exam done this. I don't say that I am the first one to do this, but in the whatever papers I have referred, I have seen no one doing this. So these are some things you can add to your answers and make them stand out from others, because जैसा मैं मतलब आई एम रिपीटेडली सेइंग कि कंटेंट सबके पास है, सोर्सेज सबके पास है, सब वही पढ़ रहे हैं, आंसर भी सब वही लिखेंगे, क्वेश्चंस भी जनरलिस्टिक है. यदि आपको पूछ रहे कि टेल द रीजंस फॉर सॉइल पोल्यूशन, और एग्रीकल्चर में आता है कि टेल व्हाट आर द मेजर हर्डल्स इन एग्रो प्रोसेसिंग इन इंडिया, सब वही लिख रहे हैं आंसर्स. जेनेरिक पॉइंट्स तो सभी लिख के आएंगे. 5-6 पॉइंट निकालने में, यदि आप करंट अफेयर्स पढ़ रहे हो, आप तैयारी कर रहे हो साल 2 साल से, जेनेरिक पॉइंट्स तो आपको आते ही है. मैं यदि आपको भी बोलूँ कि एक्सटेम्पोरे, इफ आई गिव अ टॉपिक एंड आस्क यू टू स्पीक, इवन यू विल टॉक थिंग्स अबाउट एनी टॉपिक, बट दैट डजंट काउंट. दैट विल गिव यू एवरेज नंबर्स. दिस वाज जस्ट इनफ. आई क्लियर्ड द मेंस कट ऑफ बाय 5 मार्क्स दैट टाइम. बहुत एवरेज आंसर लिख के आया था मैं, एवरेज नंबर मिले मुझे. What you do ought to do is add more value to your answers. और उसमें ज़्यादा टाइम डिवोट करो. आप एक नोटबुक बना लीजिए, एक डायरी बना लीजिए, उसमें ये सब नोट करके रखिए जो आपके आंसर्स को और अच्छा बना सकता है. जैसे मैंने इलस्ट्रेशन में दिखाया, आर्टिकल्स लिख लीजिए, कोट्स लिख लीजिए, एग्जाम्पल्स लिख लीजिए. हैव दैट बुक रेडी विथ यू, रिवाइज इट कंटिन्यूसली. दैट विल हेल्प यू राइट गुड आंसर्स. Routine, I used to wake up early to study. I cannot study in late hours. So मेरा वो ऐसा energy level decreasing इस पे होता है. तो I studied topics of high weightage, high priority in the morning session itself. जैसे जब भी अगर agriculture के कुछ important topics है, I used to do it in the morning. And then after that, light things like current affairs. जैसे जैसे दिन खत्म होता है, जो चीज़ें आपको याद नहीं रखनी है, जो बस वेग है, पढ़ना है इसलिए पढ़ना है, जिसका कोई काम नहीं है, ऐसी चीज़ें आप शाम को पढ़िए, रात को पढ़िए. मतलब मेरा ऐसा था. जो इम्पोर्टेंट है, जो एग्जाम में आएगी, जिसका मुझे यूज़ होने वाला है, वो आई यूज्ड टू डू एट प्रियोरिटी. या दिस इज हाउ यू गो अबाउट इट. नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. एग्ज़ाम कभी भी क्लियर कर सकते हो आप, इसमें कोई ये नहीं है. I don't think you should wait for 2023, 4 you want to say. वो तो आ ही रहा है ना 10 महीने में. हाँ, तो बिल्कुल दे सकते हो आप. प्रीलिम्स की पढ़ाई अगर आपका फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट है तो आपको ज़्यादा समय लगेगा. 6 महीने लीजिए, अभी 10 महीने ना, 6-7 महीने प्रीलिम्स का करिए, बट परफेक्ट कीजिए. जो बेसिक बुक्स है, जैसे पॉलिटी की बुक बेसिक बुक हो, मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री की हो, एनवायरनमेंट की हो, आर्ट एंड कल्चर की हो, ये बेसिक बुक्स को ना आप 1-1 महीना पढ़िए. जब मेरा फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट था तो आई ऑलरेडी सेड दैट आई वाज फियरिंग अबाउट प्रीलिम्स. मैंने पॉलिटी की बुक 1 महीना पढ़ी है, बट उसके बाद कभी नहीं पढ़ी. मतलब उसके बाद थरली नहीं पढ़ी, बस रिवाइज किया है. तो बेसिक बुक्स को आप जितना हो सके उतनी बार पढ़िए जब आपका फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट है, तो उसमें आपका एक बेस बन जाएगा. और वो इतना अच्छे से पढ़िए कि आप आने वाले अटेम्प्ट में फिर उसको सिर्फ इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक देख के जाओ तो आपको एक आइडिया आ जाना चाहिए. इतना थरली पढ़ना है आपको फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट में. तो आप अभी से, यदि आपका ऑप्शनल रेडी है या आप ऑप्शनल की पढ़ाई करना चाहते हैं, तो आप 2-3 महीने करिए ऑप्शनल की पढ़ाई. थोड़ा मेंस का देख लीजिए अगर आपको समय मिलता है तो. पर मैं रेकमेंड करूंगा कि प्रीलिम्स अच्छे से कीजिए, क्योंकि प्रीलिम्स का काफ़ी सिलेबस मेंस से ओवरलैप होता है. पॉलिटी के काफ़ी कंसेप्ट्स है, हिस्ट्री के काफ़ी कंसेप्ट्स है, एनवायरनमेंट के कंसेप्ट्स है, इकोनॉमी के है. तो ये कंसेप्ट्स आप यदि आप अभी प्रिपेयर कर लेंगे अच्छे से, तो आपको आगे ज़्यादा दुविधा नहीं होगी इन्हें पूरा करने में. सो डिवोट टाइम टू प्रीलिम्स, एंड आई थिंक 10 months इज अ वेरी बिग स्पैन ऑफ टाइम. आप कर सकते हो अच्छे से, क्योंकि अभी 2-3 महीने मेंस पढ़ लोगे, प्रीलिम्स के बाद 2-3 महीने मेंस पढ़ लोगे, दैट्स मोर देन इनफ. तो बिल्कुल कीजिए आप. और anything else? Yes.
How much time is it consumed to cover all the subject of PS as well as prelims?
वैसे तो you won't be able to complete the syllabus anytime. आप जिसकी रैंक 1 भी आएगी, आप उनसे भी पूछोगे तो वो यही कहेंगे कि आई एम अंडर प्रिपेयर्ड, क्योंकि सिलेबस इतना वास्ट है कि आपको कभी वो फीलिंग नहीं आएगी, वो कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं आएगा कि मैंने सब कवर कर लिया. और यदि आपको आ रहा है तो यू आर इन द रॉन्ग पाथ, यू आर नॉट गोइंग ऑन द राइट पाथ. तो ये तो एग्जाम का है कि सिलेबस बहुत ज़्यादा वास्ट है. आपको वो नहीं होगा कि मैंने या बट आप एक बात कर सकते हो, जो सिलेबस में मेंशन्ड है वो टॉपिक्स आप अच्छे से कवर कर लो, आप प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस को अच्छे से पढ़ लो, उससे उसको पढ़ने से आपको एक आइडिया आएगा कि यदि ये क्वेश्चन पेपर में आ रहा है तो क्यों आ रहा है, क्योंकि वो पहले पूछा गया है, यदि नहीं आ रहा है तो क्यों नहीं आ रहा है, यूपीएससी उसको बेकार समझता है, वो आपको कभी नहीं पूछेगा। तो दिस इज व्हाट यू गेट टू नो व्हेन यू थॉरली स्टडी पीवाईक्यूज। सो वो आप करिए और सिलेबस के पॉइंट वाइज पॉइंट जाइए सिलेबस को देखकर, तो आपको एक गाइडेंस रहेगी, ठीक है मैं सिलेबस पे चल रहा हूँ, मैं कुछ वेग नहीं जा रहा हूँ, मैं अपना दिमाग लगा के कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ, जो कमीशन ने दिया है कि ये पढ़ के आओ मैं वो पढ़ के जा रहा हूँ। So this can help you to anything else? Agriculture. Actually, I did not refer any particular book for agriculture, and frankly speaking, one book doesn't suffice you. Even in all this, throughout this preparation, no single source can suffice you for any language. You'll have to refer to multiple sources. And मैंने since I was preparing from scratch, because agriculture का मुझे background से कुछ नहीं पता था, तो I extensively used internet for it. There are some good websites for agriculture. यदि आप चाहते तो मैं आपको नाम दे सकता हूँ, agri info करके है एक, इट्स अ गुड वेबसाइट। यहाँ पे इन्होंने टॉपिक्स कवर करे हैं और नोट फॉर्मेट में है, काफ़ी एग्जाम्पल्स के साथ है, तो आप काफ़ी इससे कवर कर सकते हो। पेपर 2 का जो पार्ट है टेक्निकल पार्ट, वो इससे कवर हो जाएगा। और एक पर्सन है जिन्होंने एग्रीकल्चर के साथ क्लियर किया है एग्ज़ाम, आई थिंक 2 साल पहले, उनका नाम मिस नेहा धाईगुड़े है। शी स्कोर्ड एक्सट्रीमली गुड इन एग्रीकल्चर। तो उन्होंने अपने ब्लॉग पे अपने एग्रीकल्चर की स्ट्रैटेजी और नोट्स भी शेयर करे हैं, तो आप उनको रेफर कीजिए। और वो नोट्स आप एक रेफरेंस बोल के यूज कीजिए, क्योंकि आपको उसमें अपडेशन करना होगा, आपको अपने नोट्स तो बनाने ही होंगे। देयर इज नो ऑप्शनल में, तो आई विल टेल एवरीवन, ऑप्शनल में देयर इज नो सब्स्टिट्यूट टू मेकिंग योर ओन नोट्स, बिकॉज जब आपका मेंस का जीएस के 4-5 पेपर हो जाएंगे और ऑप्शनल के पेपर के पहले जो 5 दिन का समय रहेगा, तब आपको रियलाइज होगा कि एक शॉर्ट नोट्स, कंसाइज नोट्स का क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है, क्योंकि वो 5 दिन में इतना प्रेशर होगा आप पे, इतना कुछ पढ़ना होगा, क्योंकि दीज सब्जेक्ट्स आर एज गुड एज योर ग्रेजुएशन सिलेबस। जो आप ग्रेजुएशन में 3-4 साल पढ़ते हो, वो आपको वहाँ 1 दिन में जाके लिखना है सब कुछ। इन दोस 5 days यू विल फील दैट प्रेशर कि मतलब मेरे पास एक इतने से नोट्स होने चाहिए जिससे मैं फुली रिवाइज कर सकूँ। तो नोट्स तो आपको बनाना है और आप खुद के नोट्स बनाइए। और जैसे मैं बता रहा था, आप वो मैम के नोट्स आप रेफरेंस बोल के यूज़ कर सकते हो, उन्होंने उसमें काफ़ी अच्छे से डिटेल में डिस्कस किया है। दैट्स इट। एनीथिंग एल्स? बोलिए। हाँ, अकाउंट तो है, मतलब पहले कुछ नहीं था, अभी एग्ज़ाम के बाद स्टार्ट किया है, तो क्यों चाहिए? हाँ हाँ, तो मैं अभी आई एम इन अ प्रोसेस टू राइट दिस पेज, आई एम स्टार्टिंग दिस ब्लॉग, अभी स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ इसको। बेसिकली आई शेयर एवरीथिंग द अप्रोच आई टुक, माय नोट्स, जैसे इलस्ट्रेशंस दिखाया मैंने, तो मेरे नोट्स भी है काफ़ी, वो भी अपलोड करूँगा। और बाकी टिप्स जो आंसर राइटिंग में यूज़ आ सकती है, जो ऐसे में और डिटेल में हम बात कर सकते हैं, तो वो सब प्लानिंग में है, प्रोसेस में है, अभी कर दूंगा मैं टाइम मिलते ही। या एनीथिंग एल्स? सोर्सेज एंड बुक लिस्ट फॉर हिस्ट्री प्रीलिम्स के लिए, मेंस के लिए तो वही मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री के लिए आप अपना जो सब लोग करते हैं वही करिए, स्पेक्ट्रम का यूज़ कर लीजिए, दैट इज सफिशिएंट, मोर देन इनफ। बट स्पेक्ट्रम में भी आप देखिए कि इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक्स कौन से हैं। स्टार्टिंग के 100-150 पेज कुछ काम के नहीं है, लास्ट के 100-150 पेज जहाँ कंटेम्प्रेरी हिस्ट्री है वो भी कुछ काम का नहीं है, बीच में के जो इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक्स है वो देख लीजिए आप, इतना सा बचेगा वो करने के बाद वो पढ़ लीजिए। वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, मैंने एक और पर्सन है जिन्होंने एग्जाम क्लियर करा है, उन्होंने अपने नोट्स शेयर करे थे, उन्होंने किसी सोर्स को रेफर करके अपने शॉर्ट नोट्स बनाए थे, तो मैंने उनके नोट्स देख के अपने और शॉर्ट नोट्स बनाए, तो आप हिस्ट्री में वो कर सकते हो। एंड एनीवेज दैट डजंट मैटर, बिकॉज लास्ट ईयर तो हिस्ट्री का एक भी क्वेश्चन नहीं आया था वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री का, तो जितने छोटे नोट्स हो सफिशिएंट है, आपको बस बेसिक पता होना चाहिए, टाइमलाइन, बेसिक स्कीम ऑफ थिंग्स दैट हैपेंड इन वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, वो दैट विल सफाइस। और बाकी आर्ट एंड कल्चर के लिए आपने मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री पूछा या हिस्ट्री ओवरऑल? हाँ, तो एंशियंट मिडिवल इज आर आर्ट एंड कल्चर इज बेसिकली आर हिस्ट्री ओनली. सो आप उसको एक बुक है जो जिस पब्लिकेशन का बुक आप यूज़ करते हो पॉलिटी के लिए, जो लक्ष्मीकांत का है, उसी पब्लिकेशन का बुक है आर्ट एंड कल्चर के लिए. मैंने वो यूज़ किया था. वो भी उसमें भी 60-70% चैप्टर्स कुछ काम की नहीं है. जो चैप्टर्स काम के हैं, जो सिलेबस में है, उसको आप रेफ़र कीजिए. एंड वो बुक मैं हिस्ट्री के लिए रेफ़र नहीं आपको रिकमेंड नहीं करूँगा, बस एग्जाम के लिए रेफ़र करूँगा. वो उसमें हिस्ट्री के थोड़े डिस्टॉर्टेड फैक्ट्स भी है, तो आई वोंट रिकमेंड इट फॉर हिस्ट्री, बट एग्जाम के लिए आप उसका यूज़ कर सकते हो. दैट्स इट. हाँ, तो वही बताया मैंने, एंशियंट हिस्ट्री एंड मॉडर्न, एंशियंट एंड मिडिवल हिस्ट्री सेम एज आर आर्ट एंड कल्चर. सो आप उसी से कवर कर सकते हो सब. सो एनीथिंग एल्स? हाउ मेनी आर हैव अपीयर्ड फॉर प्रीलिम्स? 1. अच्छा, सब फ्रेश पर्सपेक्टिव है क्या सब? अच्छा, तो समझ में तो आया ना मेंस के बारे में जो बोला. बेसिक आइडिया तो पता है ना मेंस होता क्या है, मेंस के पेपर्स क्या है, तो आपको मतलब जनरलाइज समझ गया ना, या बहुत बाउंसर गया ऐसा तो नहीं है ना? ठीक है, बट आई थिंक ये आपको ज़्यादा आप रिलेट कर पाओगे, ज़्यादा आपको सेंस करेगा जब एक बार आप आंसर राइटिंग का कुछ स्टार्ट कर दो. बिकॉज ओनली देन यू विल रियलाइज कि एक आंसर लिखना कितना डिफिकल्ट है, एक गुड आंसर लिखना कितना डिफिकल्ट है. और आप जब कुछ भी लिखने लग जाओगे, और सबके साथ होता है ये, आई एम नॉट ट्राइंग टू डिस्करेज एनीवन, बट ये सबके साथ होता है कि लगता है कि मैंने क्या लिख दिया, ये मैं क्या लिख रहा हूँ, इससे थोड़ी सिलेक्शन होगा, इससे ये क्या होगा, तो ऐसा सब लगता है. तो तब आपको ये टॉक थोड़ा ज़्यादा सेंस करेगा. बट यू कैन वॉच इट अगेन एनीवेज. सो दैट्स इट. आपको और भी कुछ डाउट है जो प्रीलिम से हो, मेन से हो, तो आप पूछ सकते हो, एल्स विल एंड इट. I never read any NCERT. I don't recommend it. If you want to follow me, there's certain set of books जो basic books है, आप उन्हीं को अच्छे से कीजिए. जैसे मैंने कहा, आपका फर्स्ट टाइम प्रीलिम्स दे रहे हो तो क्वालिटी 1 महीना पढ़िए, there's nothing wrong in it, बट अच्छे से समझ के पढ़िए. उसके बाद आपको कोई NCERT पढ़ने की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है. वैसे ही मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं. स्पेक्ट्रम हैज कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली कवर्ड एवरी हिस्ट्री. आप PYQs देखोगे तो there would be hardly any PYQ that has not come from that has not been mentioned in spectrum. तो उससे आपको पता चलेगा कि it is sufficient. और एक आध दो क्वेश्चन तो बाहर से आएंगे. एक क्वेश्चन के लिए आप पूरी नई बुक नहीं पढ़ सकते. यदि आप पढ़ रहे हो तो आप फिर डाइवर्स डिस्ट्रैक्ट हो रहे हो. तो वो एक दो क्वेश्चंस UPSC डालता ही है आपको थोड़ा एग्जाम का ये बनाने के लिए. तो डोंट पे अटेंशन टू सच क्वेश्चंस, छोड़ दीजिए. So done? Yeah. Thank you so much.